top of the evening to you, Michael.
Part 2.
But bottom of the evening.
Indeed.
Part 2 of our foray into our St. Patrick's Day special. Down to the nuts and bolts. This is what we're here for.
Exactly fucking right.
The fornication of spiders will not be tolerated in this establishment.
Indeed. Poor spiders. Imagine all those poor spiders sitting there going, oh, gee, I would just love to be fucked right now. And a bunch of these Aussie fuckers going around, well, we're not here to fuck spiders. It's like, oh, really? Not even once? Poor spiders.
Little virgins. Actually, speaking of spiders, one of the best phrases I ever heard in my life was a bloke telling me how scared he was, or how nervous he was about something. He's like, me arsehole was puckering like a brown spider doing push-ups. Only in Australia.
True. But we're pretending to be not in it. Well, I mean, we're not pretending to be not in Australia, but we're not pretending to be anything Irish at all. Just scratch that part. But what we are here to do is drink Irish whiskey. And
sure are.
What better Irish whiskey to start with than a whiskey called the Irishman?
The Irishman.
And you must say it with an Irish accent. I mean, you can't turn around and say, yeah, I'm drinking the Irishman.
The Irishman?
Fuck no. It's the Irishman, man. It's the Irishman.
Sure is. Straight out of Walsh Distillery. 12-year-old single malt.
Indeed. And there's many things we do, but one of the things we don't do,
Dram.
except for that one time, is drink fucking blends.
Mm.
Maybe those 2 times.
Yeah, Jameson definitely wasn't an option for this.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. A little bit of history on the Walsh Distillery. They say it's the quintessential representation of the fantastic frenetic energy of the current Irish whiskey revival. As we said, go back and listen to part 1. Irish whiskey's in a renaissance right now. It's blowing up big time.
You know what that sentence was, though?
Mm-hmm.
Fucking full of buzzwords.
Mm. And one thing, if you want to vomit in your mouth a little bit, go to Walsh Whiskey, that's whiskey with an E.com, and try and find out anything about the whiskey. It's just a barrage of marketing buzzwords. There's enough buzzwords on the website to sink the SS Bushmills. What was the SS Bushmills, you might ask? We're going to get to that. So the big charge, obviously being led by Jamesons. They're the ones with Diageo behind them, fucking making it rain.
Fucking Diageo own everything.
Yeah. You'd think they were Chinese, wouldn't you?
They could be. I don't know.
Yeah, China probably owns half of Diageo. Also, Bushmills, Tullamore Dew aren't too far behind. There's a vast number of newcomers, much like Walsh. You've also got Hibernia, Teeling, Glendalough. They illustrate the confidence that the Irish have in their industry. So the Walsh Whiskey Distillery at Royal Oak has the capacity to produce 650,000 cases annually, which is one of the largest independent Irish distilleries and the only independent distillery producing all 3 styles of Irish whiskey, which is pot still, malt and grain, all under the one roof. In their first year alone, they filled 5,000 barrels of pot still, malt and grain, which for context equates to roughly the entire Tasmanian whiskey stock, new and mature.
Jesus.
It was established by Bernie and Rosie Walsh. Their whiskey story begins back in 1999 when they started blending and bottling Irish coffee. Rosemary.
Hang on, did you say blending and bottling Irish coffee?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Fuck, that's a fair step from coffee to whiskey, isn't it?
Isn't Irish coffee just coffee with a shot of whiskey in it? That's what I always thought.
Yeah, no,
you have Irish coffee.
You make a good point. Yeah, I thought you just meant like, coffee
I
from
don't.
Ireland.
No, I don't. I don't think their coffee industry is terribly expansive.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
So it's hardly the climate for it.
No, well, yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah, okay, fair enough. That's probably why Irish coffee has whiskey in it. Yeah, makes sense.
Rosemary, she ran a ski chalet in France, and in true Irish spirit, no pun intended, she'd treat guests to an Irish coffee after every evening meal, and then the idea for Hot Irishman Irish coffee was born. Today it remains one of the company's key exports. In 2005, they added the Irishman cream liqueur, and a year later secured a long-term supply agreement with Middleton Distillery to distill and lay down whiskey stock under contract to their specs while they planned their own distillery. Over the next 8 years, they released a series of well-received whiskies under the Irishman, and they also do Writer's Tears labels. The former is triple distilled single malt, and the latter is a vatting of single malt and single pot still, 60% and 40% respectively. Whiskies, no grain, no coffee stills.
Good.
If you want to know what a coffee still is, go back to part 1. Made from an old Irish pot still recipe, handed down from generation to generation, kept secretive under lock and key, 11 secret herbs and spices. I might have made a lot of that up. Plans for Walsh Distillery began to take shape in about 2013, and they announced a $25 million partnership with an Italian company, Ilva Sorano, to build a dedicated whiskey distillery, warehouse and visitor centre in the small village of Royal Oak in County Carlow, South East Ireland, which was the first new whiskey distillery in Carlow and the southeast of Ireland in 200 years.
Oh, there you go.
Although you were telling me that something's happened there.
I read recently that that partnership, due to a disagreement with how they wanted the product to develop and the direction they wanted to go, they have split. Because it's the Italian company, was it Ilva Sorano?
Yeah, yep.
They acquired a 50% stake for their $25 million, and they are going to, from what I understand, and I may be paraphrasing or I may have it slightly wrong, they're going to take over the distillery, and Walsh are going to retain the branding portfolio and the existing spirits. So I don't know how that actually works out.
I wonder what the future holds for them then.
It'll be interesting.
If they'll just go back to Middleton and get their stuff basically brewed under license, as he'd stay in the beer world.
Yeah, exactly.
Work commenced in 2014, and in 2016, Rosemary and Bernie oversaw the commissioning of Walsh Whisky Distillery and the distillation of its first new make spirit. And this momentous occasion heralded a new golden era of Irish whiskey, and whiskey lovers across the world were getting pretty excited about it.
Well, good on them.
Yeah, I can't see anything wrong with the rebirth of the Irish whiskey industry.
Oh, look, at the end of the day, the more people that are making whiskey, the better off we are.
Exactly.
Just make a good whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first... you've tried this before, haven't you?
No, I've not.
So
this is a fresh bottle.
try for both of us.
We've cracked this.
Yeah. And I've been sitting here quietly nosing it.
Mm-hmm. What was the first thing you thought?
Sweetness. You can smell the because it's first fill bourbon casks, I believe, and you can smell that influence. But sweetness, your vanilla.
Really, first thing I thought was Hellier's Road.
Yeah, right.
This is just reeks of Tasmania.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, there's a heavy vanilla component, I reckon.
See, it's got that, what I'm going to call decaying daffodils until I find out what it is.
Yep. Yeah, it's got that kind of Highland tang to it. There's a bit of clove in there as well, which I find interesting. So it's definitely, there's some spicy elements to it on the nose, tempered by the bourbon and I think a vanilla thread that ties it all together on the nose. But I have been I have been nosing it for a while.
It's like a very weak cinnamon or nutmeg.
Yeah.
Interwoven. It's definitely not a dominant aroma.
No, the spices aren't dominant. The spices are an accompaniment.
It does smell big and round. But that decaying vegetable matter or floral sort of material, almost, it lends itself to almost like a solvent or acetone, but that's only when you get deep. Pretty spicy.
That's my first impression. A lot of spice.
It seems
on that first sip.
It was very kind of empty when it went onto the tongue. Left with a lot of spice. And yeah, sort of a solventy, a lingering on the finish. I'm sure it's going to get smoother.
It always does.
Yeah. That first sip left a little bit to be desired, but now it's starting to. I'm getting the vanilla out of it now that it's sat for a bit.
The second sip is a lot less astringent, but it's still spicy.
Yeah, I'm sort of left with. There's like a menthol on the middle of the tongue and a vanilla on the outside of it, or vanilla on the roof of the mouth.
That clove that's very light on the nose is a little heavier on the tongue.
Yeah, actually, that's what the spice and the menthol-y kind of thing is. It sums it up very, very well, actually. It's very much cloves. Have you ever had cloves on their own?
Yeah. I used to chew them when I had a toothache. Old wives kind of thing that I think my nan told me. So I'd...
Indian fella at work would use them as basically breath mints.
Yeah, right. But there's some fruit in there as well.
Yeah.
And the malt, kind of cereally.
Yeah, I think that's where it's tied to that vanilla aspect. It does. The second sip was much more pleasurable.
And it noses a little differently after a couple of sips as well. It's a little gentler, a little less angled.
I did find it already pretty round, but it does make it.
I found it a little angled on those early noses, a little sting to it.
If you get deep, yeah, for sure. That fucking Tasmanian element is bothering me so hard. But this reeks of it. This reminds me a hell of a lot of Hellier's Road.
Yeah, it gets smoother with each sip, but she's a spicy whiskey. And it's not... I mean, the first sip, what we quite often refer to as white pepper, that fades very quickly, and you are left with... I do think it's a clovey kind of...
Yeah, it's clovey, mentholy, spicy.
Maybe a touch of anise in there.
Anise, has the same sort of mentholy kind of thing.
Yeah, and just kind of... And it's powerful.
It's getting better and better and better though with each sip.
It's kind of a little grassy.
I was gonna say sort of a little nutty even. The more I look into that, the more I like it.
I like it, but she's a little top heavy. Lacks a little body.
Yeah, there's a very narrow lane, kind of. It's not very narrow, but it's just a single lane.
Yep. But it is. You're right. By the time you get to your fourth or fifth sip,
Yeah.
it's lovely.
Yeah, that's actually quite good.
I haven't drunk a lot of Irish whiskey. This is a first
me
try
neither.
for me as well.
Especially Irish single malts, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of it's rich in its single lane.
Yeah, there is a lot going on in that sort of high end, in the alto soprano.
But it's not what I'd say rich as in, it's like it's not voluptuous.
No, not at all.
It's not sultry.
It's not. No.
It's here I go doing the fucking Jim Murray fucking, but it's a.
Are you about to get a bit sexist on me?
It's in a dainty summer dress.
Yeah. I don't call this sexist at all. If this is how it makes you feel, this is how it makes you feel.
It's light and breezy. It's light linen as opposed to silk.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite as smooth as silk, but it is. It's very lightweight.
Mm-hmm.
It
is very summery or spring.
Yeah. It's a gentle breeze blowing through a meadow. It's outdoors, not indoors. It's bright light as opposed to shadows.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty without being
Lovely.
sensual. It's innocent. Or maybe it's uncorrupted. Because the two things are different. Yeah, it's redolent with pie spice. Like it's apple pie, but there's no apple.
Super enjoyable though.
Yeah, really nice.
Mm.
Nice robe on it too.
Yeah, I've been admiring that between sips.
Yeah,
Not nice viscosity in the glass, but not too oily.
No, not oily on the tongue. Yeah, light and breezy. 12 years old seems about right.
Yeah, I think a 15 would be pretty special.
Oh, I think you're right.
But I seem to say that about every 12-year-old I come across.
Don't we?
Yeah.
That's there's a bit of copy on the back of the bottle here.
It's basically all tasting notes, really.
The hallmark of this exceptional malt is its incredible aroma. First fill bourbon casks give a light, sweet, spicy note of vanilla, cinnamon, and even a hint of clove. Yep, that is pretty spot on.
Funny.
A burst
got it right for a change.
A burst of rich flavours and sweetness on the palate, delicately bolstered by black peppercorns. The finish is succulent fruits and a lingering flavour of grassy cereal notes. Oh,
I wouldn't not getting the succulent fruits.
no, like I suppose we probably associate succulent fruits with something that's had a sherry influence to it, or
Yeah, I guess so.
some of those Christmassy type drams.
Yeah. What fruit would you describe as succulent?
I find a cherry to be succulent.
Okay.
A grape is succulent. I suppose these are high moisture content fruits, but maybe a mango would be succulent. But I wouldn't call a mango.
What I was just thinking.
Yeah, but I don't associate the taste of mango with succulence.
Yeah.
Just the texture.
Mm.
I suppose it's.
Well, having said that, I guess the grapes kind of, but that's because they lend themselves to alcohol so readily.
Yep. Maybe cherry from the. Maybe I'm not anthropomorphizing it, but from advertising or the imagery that plays around a cherry. You know, like a cherry being bitten by a pair of succulent lips, maybe associating the succulence of the cherry with the succulence of the image, as opposed to the actual fruit itself. I like this. This is a nice whiskey.
Yeah, this is nice. The more I sip in it, the more I take this over a Hellier's, for sure. Especially the standard 10-year-old that they do.
Well, it's nice. You know, this is a 12-year-old that tastes like a 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
You come across 10, 11, 12-year-olds, even sometimes 13, 14, 15-year-olds that don't taste like they've spent that much time. While there is a spicy element to this, it seems that it's intentional, like it's cultivated spice, as opposed to, oh shit, we've made a spicy whiskey, let's put on the back of the label that it's spicy. I mean, they've identified them.
Pepper buzzwords.
Yeah, they've identified them, but they've
nutmegs and.
Yeah, this is, I quite like this.
Mm. Yeah, I don't mind it at all. Well, they claim it's a recreation of traditional Irish whiskies recipes from the 19th century. And thanks to their independent contract with Middleton, Walsh have been bottling whiskey since 2007 under the Irishman and Riders Tears labels, which has allowed them to establish 2 strong global whiskey brands, distribution over 40 markets worldwide, while their own pot still, single malt and grain whiskies were maturing for release back in 2019. I'm not sure if this has a date stamp on it, actually. Yeah, 2016.
So this is from Middleton then?
Mm-hmm. The Irishman single malt is especially exciting because despite Middleton supplying the whiskey, they hadn't bottled any single malt themselves until recently under their super premium Method Madness range, which was unveiled in Dublin back in 2017. And previously a certain mystique had sort of surrounded the Irishman single malt's provenance with some reviewers. Even the Rev speculated that the juice might actually come from Bushmills. There's also a rumour that Middleton supplies Bushmills with grain whiskey for their blends in return for its triple distilled single malt, but the official word from Walsh is that it's Middleton, distilled and laid down under contract to their specs.
Fair enough.
As you said before, it's exclusively aged in first flame charred American oak ex-bourbon. Triple distilled, non-chill filtered, 43%. And only a handful of the best barrels were selected to make the cut. How the fuck they select like the best barrels? It's probably an episode within itself, really.
Yeah. We probably need to speak to a blender.
Mm. It's a good question for a blender.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But they only produce me 6,000 bottles a year. A few fun facts. In 2008, they created Irish whiskey's first cask strength whiskey of the modern era.
I'm sorry, if you're going to say fun facts, I need you to be being fun. What are you doing?
I've been up way too long to be fun.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll do a fun dance next to you where you do fun facts.
Walsh built the largest manually operated distillery in Ireland, uniquely distilling all 3 styles of whiskey under the one roof, and they also crafted the world's first distillation of organic single pot still.
Oh, now if you want to know more about the processes you've got to go through to earn yourself organic certification in the world of whiskey, you can go back and listen to an earlier episode. That was Ben Romack.
Ben Romack, yeah.
I can't tell you what episode number it is, but just have a look through the look for the word Ben Romack.
Mm.
Listen to that one.
Can't have you guessed that was kind of early on, wasn't it? It's probably around the 6 or 7 mark.
Oh, my memory is not capable of neither confirming nor denying that.
No, I remember some people remember we played that gig back in I don't know, May 2012. Like that fucking this. Nah, man, I wouldn't remember what I had for breakfast unless I had the same thing every day.
Yeah, legit.
Yeah, Katy Perry created a little bit of hype around Walsh Distillery when she tweeted about her love affair for Riders Tears.
Really? Did she actually have a love affair for Riders Tears?
I don't know if she got, sexual with Riders Tears. She was definitely a fan of it in and maybe around her mouth.
Gee, I tell you what, that smells different. What have
you moved on to then?
I've moved on to the Bushmills.
Right.
Because as you say,
The Sherry Cask Reserve. The first release from the Steamship Collection. A travel retail exclusive. Feel free to hook in to a bit of history.
why not? So, I mean, you wouldn't guess, but the old Bushmills distillery is in Bushmills, which is in Northern Ireland.
Fuck me.
I know, right? Fucking imaginative as fuck. In the county of Antrim in Northern Ireland. It's owned by Casa Cuervo.
Yeah, whatever.
Mexico. You're
The same like Casa Cuervo is like Jose Cuervo.
That's,
They do the tequila.
it looked like that, but my pronunciation
Spelt the same way.
Mexican is far less Mexican than yours. It's Bushmills Distillery uses water drawn from St. Columba's Rill, which is a tributary of the River Bush. There's probably a mill on the River Bush, hence the...
There are actually several,
There you go.
and that's what it's named for.
So it was a popular tourist attraction with around 120,000 visitors per year. It isn't at the moment
No,
because of COVID.
thanks to the Rona.
So I think it's currently closed until further notice. I would imagine that's the visitor centre.
Yeah, pretty sure it's the same deal for Royal Oak that are responsible for the Irishman.
Indeed. So obviously named for the mills that are along the River Bush. And as they say, without the village there would be no whiskey, and without the whiskey there would be no village.
It's a vicious cycle.
It's a self-fulfilling thingamajiggy. Not a prophecy. What do they call those things?
Mobius strip. Perpetuating.
Perpetuation engine? No.
Oh, self-propulsion.
Fuck it.
Yeah. Oh, perpetual motion machine.
There we go.
There,
Perpetual
yeah.
motion machine.
Yeah, that's oxymoron, but we're not here to talk science.
No, well, yeah. Only if we're... No, we're not here to talk science.
Science of distillation, maybe.
So, as we know, they claim to be the oldest distillery, but we've debunked that. Just call us Mythbusters. Call us Mythbusters. But the area does have a long tradition of distillation. According to one story, as far back as 1276, an early settler called Sir Robert Savage of Ards, before defeating the Irish in battle, fortified his troops with a mighty drop of aqua vitae.
What a general.
Fucking A.
What a general. Actually, I'd be scared shitless. I'd want fucking half a bottle before I ran at somebody with a sword.
Especially, I don't know if you've seen Braveheart, but those fuckers, obviously, they were Scots, but there were some Irish fuckers that looked pretty scary there too. I mean, basically, Celts were scary cunts. You'd want to be half cut before running at them in battle, I reckon. So, smart general. But yeah, 1608 license was granted to Sir Thomas Phillips by King James I to distill whiskey. We've been through
go back to part one. We go into that deep.
Indeed. So the timeline here. 1784,
The true date.
the Bushmills Old Distillery Company is established by Hugh Anderson, known to his mates as Ando. I may have made that up. Obviously, Bushmills suffered many lean years, as all distilleries have over the years. Numerous periods of closure with no record of the distillery being in operation in the official records both in 1802 and 1822.
If that's the extent of it, I think they got off very lightly.
Big time. I mean, we some distilleries were silent for 50 odd fucking years.
And then some.
In
Just
18
quietly, this nose is bloody nice.
Yeah,
It's a sherry.
there's the sherry influence adds a bit more of a body and depth to the nosing
Yeah,
experience.
and compared to the Irishman, it's got a lot more substance to it.
But she's sharper.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
There's a big
there's
sting
your,
on there's the nas
there's your
sting.
nas, yeah.
1860, a Belfast spirit merchant named Jamie McColgan and Patrick Cottigan bought the distillery. In 1880, they formed a limited company. In 1885, the original Bushmills buildings were destroyed by fire, but the distillery was swiftly rebuilt. In 1890, a steamship owned and operated by the distillery, the SS Bushmills. So that's what you meant by the SS Bushmills. Made its maiden voyage across the Atlantic to deliver Bushmills whiskey to America. It called at Philadelphia and New York City before heading on to Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Yokohama.
That has me fucking confused.
Why?
I'm not confused, but I'm sort of stipulating. Which way did they go from once you get to New York? Where do you go? Do you go all the way down, like Panama Canal wasn't a thing back in 1890.
No, I don't think it was.
How,
That was in 19-something.
yeah, how the faff do you get to Singapore from New York? Did they go, which way did they go? Did they go down past South America or South Africa?
Look, geography's not my strong suit.
Yeah, I'm not sure, yeah.
My strong suit is drinking whiskey. And even then...
That just seems like an extraordinary mission.
Well, I mean, getting around the world was an extraordinary mission back in
You know,
those days.
in a steamship.
Probably took
carrying
fucking
whiskey.
8 months.
Yeah, probably.
In the early 20th century, the US was a very important market for Bushmills, obviously for everyone, or pretty much everyone,
Yeah.
for anything, fucking ever. But Prohibition, 1920, that fucked everyone. Bushmills managed to survive.
Barely a spit shine on that fisting.
Yeah, no lube whatsoever. Not even a smile or a thank you, man. Just a fuck you.
Smash and grab of the old colon, that was.
Ooh, ouch. So Wilson Boyd, Bushmills director at the time, predicted the end of Prohibition and had large stores of whiskey ready to export. Smart fucker. Bought by not Sir. I saw the name Isaac and just immediately put the word Sir in front of it. Isaac Wolfson bought it after the Second World War. In 72, it was taken over by the Irish distillers, meaning that Irish distillers controlled the production of all Irish whiskey at the time. Now, that's a fucking monopoly.
Yeah, but it's not a huge claim to fame when you've only got 2 distilleries in your country.
True, but, you got the whole lot.
You still have the whole lot, don't you?
And then, just to piss off pretty much every Irish person, French fuckers come along and bought it in the form of Pernod Ricard. In June 2005, Diageo bought it off the French for £200 million. Just pocket change for Diageo.
Keep that in my cupboard, actually. That's under the mattress, that was.
In May 2008, Bank of Ireland issued a new series of sterling banknotes
This is great.
in Northern Ireland, which all feature an illustration of the old Bushmills distillery on the obverse side.
I love it that it's important enough to them
Oh, fuck yeah.
that you put it on a banknote.
It replaced the previous note series which depicted Queen's University of
Yeah,
Belfast.
start fuck your studies. Everybody just get pissed.
Love it. In November 2014, it was announced that Diageo had traded the Bushmills brand with Jose Cuervo in exchange for 50% of the Don Julio brand of tequila that Diageo did not already own. So, fuck. When you've got that much
Swapping,
fucking, when you've got that much fucking cold hard cash, you go, fuck, I'll keep it, I'll swap you.
Yeah.
Fucking, must be nice.
It's like trading cards.
Yeah, exactly. I can build your own deck.
Yeah, upper deck.
2017, they revealed plans to build 29 maturation warehouses as part of a £30 million development plan. And they probably have done that. Because that was
by now, yeah. Loving the nose. I really love the way that sherry noses.
Yeah, sherry just adds something. You know, whether it's Irish whiskey, Japanese whiskey, Scottish whiskey, Australian whiskey. I haven't had a sherry cask Indian whiskey, but I'm sure it does the same thing to Indian whiskey. And fuck, I haven't tried Scandinavian whiskey either.
There is one Scandinavian distillery, isn't there? A Norwegian, maybe?
I think there's a Norwegian one. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Finnish one. But at the same time, I would also understand if the Finns just sat there and went, fuck you. They're going to do something different. They like that, the Finns. I've had a Pinot finished American single malt.
Okay.
I didn't like it.
So I had a Dram of Pinot finished Helios yesterday.
Ooh.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, right.
16-year-old. We're welcome to try one after this.
But yeah, she's
For a nose statement, that's not, doesn't dance on your tongue too hard.
Oh, let's find out.
And I reckon that's, yeah. That'd be the Oloroso sherry butts. That goes down surprisingly smooth for a nice.
That's not bad. First sip, a little smoother than expected.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a Oloroso influenced robe on the fucker.
Lovely colour too.
Is this a travel exclusive?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of 4 in the series. I think number 2 was port. Yeah, it was a port cask reserve.
Well, I do like a port cask reserve.
Yeah. It makes me want to collect the set, actually.
Yeah, you should.
The 3rd edition bourbon number 3 char cask reserve. And the 4th edition, something that I hadn't really tried anything like until recently, a rum cask reserve.
Oh, I do like a rum cask finish.
Yeah, that
You know me, I'm a sweet tooth.
that Glen Scotia really opened my taste buds up.
That's a boat floater. That is. That floats boats. Yeah, that's quite nice. There's that typical kind of dried fruit. Kind of
Not as
swirl.
not your full rich Christmas pudding.
No, it's obviously needs a little more time in wood, but it's a nice direction for the Irish. Now I've never drunk a lot of Irish whiskey, and I suppose most people's experience with Irish whiskey is probably Jameson's, being the number 1 selling Irish blended whiskey on the market. And I've always found Irish whiskey to be sharp and unfulfilling. Saying that, I'm an unapologetic Lagavulin man, and fucking obviously Irish whiskey is about as far away from peat as you can get.
Well, I did go on a little tour of the Jameson distillery, and I'm a qualified Irish whiskey taster. However, I reckon I almost failed the test because it was just a gimmick, really. Somebody told me that I sit up the front, they want 12 volunteers at the end. And so I was as close as you could be to the speaker. And when she's like, right, I need some volunteers, I just grabbed one of the things off her. It turns out that we got put in a tasting sort of thing. They had, it was either Jim Beam or Jack Daniels, a Johnny Red, and a Jameson. And they basically just told you about how, it's smoother because it's triple distilled. Blah, 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 blah. Talked about it a little bit more. All right, so after knowing all this, push forward which one you prefer. And pretty much the 10 punters to the left of me and the one guy to the right all pushed forward the Jammers, and I pushed forward the Johnny Walker. And she's like, 11 of you have passed the test. So I just preferred that smoky flavour of a Scotch.
Yeah, I've always found
even if it was Johnny Red.
Yeah.
I also thought that they pick like bottom of the barrel to try and compare with.
Yeah, exactly. Big time. But this is a little less sharp than your Jamesons or say some of your pretty horrendous Irish blend. Well, I say horrendous, but
no, there's some
Tullamore Dew and
shit out there. I thought Tullamore was a single malt, but I might be wrong.
I could well be wrong. But the influence of the sherry here gives it extra body that I quite like.
I think it takes the edge off the fact that it's a nice.
I prefer the Irishman though.
Yeah.
For the smoothness and there's just more going on.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little,
it's a bit more single dimensional.
Yeah,
it's still got
a little generic.
But still, like swallowing a small cube. It's nowhere near as round as the Irishman.
Yeah.
There's not a hell of a lot more to say about this, really.
No, there isn't. We probably could have chosen. Bushmills probably do a fair range.
Out of 10-year, actually, I think they just put out like a 30-year-old not too long ago.
Yeah, that'll probably be smooth as fuck.
And I think they either do 25 or 28 as well.
This is pleasant and
nothing wrong with it at all. Oh. Nice and warm. Some of it goes down smooth. Sometimes, Sometimes it's sort of a bit of a hang up in the throat.
Yeah.
A bit of a scratch. But there's no burn to it.
No, it's surprisingly smooth for an ass.
I do love a few of the references in pop culture. One close to my heart was when Ministry frontman Al Jorgensen, before he attained relative sobriety. God, he's a unit. He used to consume as much as 2 full bottles a day.
Jesus.
And also another band that I grew up loving, NoFX. They mentioned Bushmills in their song Theme from a NoFX album on the 2000 release Pump Up the Volume.
Nice.
They had to purposefully, side fact, they had to purposely spell Valium wrong because Valium was a registered trademark. Or it still is, yeah. Another fantastic musician, Tom Waits. He mentions old Bushmills in the song Tom Trevor's Blues. Incidentally also covered by Rod Stewart.
Oh, there you go.
Who would have thought? Did you ever see The Wire?
No.
No, I heard that was pretty popular.
Definitely was popular. Don't know if it was any good.
Yeah. Oh, that was a mention of that. Yeah, that's right. The Jim McNulty refers to Bushmills as Protestant whiskey when he's offered that instead of Jameson's.
Now that's actually funny because I did come across a story. It was back in '94, but the new mayor of, it may have been New York, but it may not have been. We'll put it up in the show notes. Basically supported a boycott of Bushmills whiskey because he was associated with a Catholic a Catholic Irish organisation in the city that protested the fact that of the 104 employees at Bushmills, only I'm not sure what the number is. It was low, but it's somewhere between 10 and 30 were Catholic, and they were up in arms that there weren't enough Catholics fucking working at the Bushmills factory. Now that was something the Bushmills refuted and went, well, you got to remember as well, Bushmills is a Protestant town, so I mean, what are we supposed to do? Import Catholics to work at the fucking distillery?
That's just tokenism. No, it's meritocracy. Is this guy better at the job?
Yeah, like a competence is king.
Exactly.
Competence must be king, otherwise you're going to end up with shit whiskey. Jesus, you don't just fucking hire.
You
don't just hire the pretty girl.
If you're a one-armed Muslim female fucking lesbian, I could not give a shit. If you're better at the job than somebody else, you're better at the fucking job.
You don't just hire a pretty girl because she's pretty. You don't just hire a Catholic distiller because they're Catholic. You hire people that are the best person suited for the role.
Yeah, tokenism is fucking ruining the world.
Now, no doubt that people will disagree with that sentiment, but at the end of the day, I do really think that it should be based on merit.
Yeah, well, it should be a meritocracy.
There you go. So it's Protestant whiskey. I mean, they probably wouldn't brand themselves as Protestant whiskey. There's a lot of fucking Catholics out there. So you probably want to brand yourself as non-denominational whiskey.
Atheist whiskey.
Well, a lot of people don't like the term atheist.
You would have seen Independence Day, yeah.
I think everyone saw Independence Day, didn't they?
I went and saw that at the cinema. That was a pretty good spectacle, actually. That was one of the first big high-budget special effects films, wasn't it?
Could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're not very good on it.
It was around the same time as, shortly after Twister. I remember Twister blew everybody's mind.
I was just a Jeff Goldblum fan.
Yeah. Well, his character, he hooks into a bottle of Bushmills, lamenting the end of the world in Independence Day.
Fair. They were ugly as fuck aliens, man.
They were.
But Will Smith saved the day.
That's what he does, yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. He's just Black Mark Wahlberg, really. Or is Mark Wahlberg white Will Smith?
Mate, have you ever seen them in the same room? The same movie?
Ooh. You're onto something.
There probably is a movie that they're both in.
Probably.
We'll look it up. Or we won't.
I will find it. If it exists. Fun facts?
Sure.
You know me. I'll dance this time. I've had enough whiskey. Bushmills, they claim to have never substituted inferior corn or grain for barley. One thing I do like, at the distillery, if it ever opens again, if they ever get their COVID shit sorted out, once everybody gets the jab maybe, you get a personalised label for the 12-year-old single malt.
Yeah, nice.
That'd be a nice touch. It'd be a cool present.
Yeah.
I'd be pretty stoked with that. With the repeal of Prohibition, Bushmills reportedly set sail for Chicago with the biggest shipment of whiskey to ever leave an Irish port. I'm sure that's been surpassed by now, but...
Yep. Probably just yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not.
Ships are pretty fucking big these days. Bushmills Original has been awarded kosher status by the Chief Rabbinate of Ireland.
Loves a whiskey, that fella.
And just in case you were worried, with the exception of Bushmills Irish Honey, which includes real Irish honey, all Bushmills whiskies are suitable for vegetarians and vegans.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
It is. I personally, I don't want steak in my whiskey.
No cows were harmed in the making of this whiskey. Or other animal products.
I wonder if any insects have made their way into the still.
Almost guaranteed.
Yeah. Then would you count eating insects as?
Dude, you're not allowed to eat honey.
That's vegan, no animal product.
Didn't you just say it was vegan?
That's vegetarian and vegan, suitable for. Would you call insects? Like, would you still be vegetarian if you ate some of those deep fried crickets from fucking Sri Lanka or whatever?
Well, you'd have to ask a veggie.
It's a grey area. A lot of veggies just like. I've heard people just say anything with eyes. Don't eat anything that has eyes.
Yeah,
If you're vegetarian.
Well, an insect is technically an animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and vegans, it's not even the products of animals. So,
Yeah. Although we did catch a friend out once when she said she swallowed.
yeah, fair enough. Product of an animal.
Mm. And I'm not sure how many calories she was taking in at the time. But a 50ml serve of Bushmills has about 110 calories.
So is it diet whiskey? I don't know what the average amount of calories is.
Yeah. Aren't you supposed to have about, I think the average intake, an adult male, say, 80 kilo adult male, I think is like 8,000 calories a day.
So you can
Or it might be kilojoules.
So you can have a shitload of Bushmills.
Probably.
That's why good old fucking Jurgensen was able to fix $2 a day.
Fit as fuck.
Gotta keep his calories up.
So yeah, steamship collection, inspired by the historical SS Bushmills steamship, which celebrates its maiden voyage in the 1890s. It was commissioned by the then owner, the Boyd brothers, set sail to America, travelling as far as Philadelphia and Yokohama, and it returned with refilled casks of rum, fortified wine and bourbon.
Nice.
Smart. But yeah, it was their first ever travel retail exclusive. One fucking really cool thing that they did, super close to my heart. Bushmills partnered with Loudon Guitars to create an acoustic guitar made from copper and wood that was once used to make whiskey.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Massively into this. Alongside Irish singer-songwriter Foy Vance, it's the second instrument to be created by Bushmills and Loudon Guitars. This particular guitar features copper from the 10 copper pot stills used to triple distill the whiskey and wood from the barrels used in maturation. Alongside the barrel wood, they used African blackwood and alpine spruce to craft the body and neck of the guitar. Master luthier George Loudon said, "I was fascinated with the copper from the original copper pot stills at the old Bushmills distillery. Not only is it a beautiful metal to work with, but it's amazing to think that this material has had whiskey flowing over it for hundreds of years.
Yeah, that's cool.
Likewise, the sherry casks are literally steeped in whiskey-making heritage and used throughout to perfectly complement the other tone woods. I chose African blackwood for the back and sides because tonally it's one of the best woods you can get. And when paired with alpine spruce on the soundboard, it produces a very clear, a very strong sound. Everything about it's just beautiful. It took more than 100 hours to design and build, and it's the first time copper from the distillery has been used to make a musical instrument.
Very cool.
They made 25 of them, and they retail for £9,800, approximately $13,000 US, which would be I'd say anywhere between 15 and 17,000 Australian.
There you go.
The first time around, they made just 8.
Yeah, cool.
And yeah, didn't use any copper. They use barrel wood for the 12th fret, and back inlays, bindings, rosette, and head facings. Ancient bog oak for the back and sides, and sinker redwood for the soundboard. I have a feeling, yeah. Ed Sheeran? Yeah, Ed Sheeran, Gary Lightbody, and Eric Clapton all play Loudon.
Yeah, cool.
I'd assume that they have, an Irish luthier. Not a bad Dram overall. Man, for a NAS, that goes down pretty well.
Yeah, I didn't mind it.
Yeah. Pretty smooth, nice and sweet, as you'd expect from a sherry finish. Nothing to write home about, but you definitely wouldn't send it back or turn your nose up against it.
No.
However, this one...
This one's a bit different. This one is definitely a bit different. The Glendalough.
Or Glendalough, depending on what part of the world you're from.
Or, I mean, you can say it however you like. It's your mouth.
Yeah, I used to say Glendalough. Completely wrong.
But, so Glendalough, the Glen of Two Lakes. It's a glacier valley in the Wicklow Mountains just south of Dublin, renowned for its early medieval monastic settlement settled in the 6th century by St. Kevin, related to St. Barry. He was a son of Irish royalty. Old Kev disappeared into the mountain for 7 years to become one with the wild.
I seriously think he was doing some hectic psychedelics.
Oh, hell yeah.
At this time.
He had found a bunch of magic mushrooms and was enjoying them thoroughly. The legend says that famously a blackbird laid her eggs on him and he stood motionless for 13 days and nights until they hatched, and another 13 until they fledged. And it is this image of St. Kev you see on the Glendalough bottle.
Yeah, he's not holding a mad pipe.
No.
Or a lamp.
No, it's a bird.
He never conjured a genie.
That dude is well fucked up on shrooms.
Yeah. Serious beard action.
But, so apparently as far back as 584 AD, Irish monastic settlements like Glendalough began making posheen, which is essentially new make, from barley. So it pisses off a whole bunch of Scots that kind of predates the Scottish clergyman Friar John Corr's efforts by almost 1,000 years.
They don't like that much.
And because the pocheen came to be stored in oak barrels, and as Irish luck would have it, the wood worked miracles on it, and thus whiskey was born.
Possibly the greatest thing to ever happen.
So we're tasting the 13-year-old that has been finished in American first fill bourbon barrels and Mizunara oak. Now, if you'd like to know a little bit about Mizunara, you can go back to our Battle of the Blends episode.
I believe.
I went down a bit of a rabbit hole there. And basically, the point remains kind of controversial, hard to work with. But some people, like the people that use it, reckon it makes the whiskey heaps better. We'll find out. Because I haven't tried this before.
Already on the nose, if the nose is quite unique.
It is different. It's quite sharp and muted. A little bit of...
See, I find it's got a similar nose to the Irishman 12-year-old, which is just enhanced by something. There's like a candied vanilla thing happening, and I'm wondering if that is the Mizunara, even though back in episode 11 we've had Japanese coopers. I think it was believed that anything less than 15 years in Mizunara
Indeed.
is pointless.
So it might just be the power of suggestion, but I I can
nose
detect.
is completely different.
Yeah, I reckon I detect a little bit of coconut there. Which
Coconut, vanilla. Actually, it reminds me of. Have you ever had coconut ice?
yeah, fuck
Yeah,
yeah.
that-
That's probably the best description of it. Just a slight hint of coconut ice. But so Glendalough were or are Irish Ireland's first craft distillery, founded by a group of 5 mates in 2011, with the aim of recapturing Ireland's lost heritage of great spirit production.
Don't tell me they want to bring back Ireland's golden years.
No, so I think everyone wants to bring back the golden era of Irish whiskey. But the
Except Scotland.
yeah, but they would prefer it to stay where it was. Founded by Barry Gallagher, Brian Fagan, Gary McLaughlin, and Saint Kevin Keenan, the lads have a wealth of spirits industry knowledge. Gallagher and Fagan come from drinks finance background, while McLaughlin and Keenan are marketers who've spent years working with some of the best drinks brands on the market.
I like how you pointed out earlier that none of them are actually distillers.
Nope.
So this could be absolute rubbish.
They have, they don't have the distillers breeding, but they've got moxie, and moxie goes a long way. They started out making pochine, and spurred on by a great local reception, lads put down some money, basing their operations in Glendalough Village, County Wicklow, a site which was chosen for its superb water drawn from the nearby Wicklow Mountains. They make pochine and gin. The big plan has always been the revival of Irish single malt whiskey. So the 2015 release for Glendalogh's first single malt saw a fantastic reception in the market, buoyed by excellent results at two of the world's Grand Slam blind tasting competitions, San Fran Spirit Awards and London Spirit Masters. The Glendalough 13-year-old was named both Best Irish Whiskey and Best Single Malt Irish Whiskey in San Fran, while the 7-year-old backed it up with a Master in London. Now, I'm not particularly good at math, Rick, but those numbers don't add up. They started in 2011. So how could they have a 13-year-old whiskey in 2018?
Especially as a date stamped. No, there's a number. The last number's 17. There's 5 numbers. 94817.
Wow.
I'm going to assume that this is a 2017 bottling.
But
that doesn't add up.
So
how do you have a 13-year-old when you've only been in business?
How do you? You know how you do it? You get Cooley Distillery to distill your spirit using your recipe. So apart from making whiskey for their own brands, Cooley made absolutely vast amounts of whiskey intended for private label and independent bottlers.
Right.
Internationally recognised as the finest single malt island, these ex-Cooley whiskies are in very high demand, increasingly harder to get hold of, even more now that Beam Suntory, Diageo's evil cousins, have bought Cooley. They bought it in 2012 and put a stop to the private label production.
Right.
Fuckers. So, but the boys at Glendalough have somehow managed to get hold of some of the remaining stocks, and they've matured it under their stewardship before cutting it with Wicklow water to produce what is said to be one of the most remarkable Irish whiskies ever to come to market. Is it? We are to find out.
It's definitely different to anything I've noticed. It has, yeah, it has that Tasmanian element underpinning the sort of higher candied vanilla, almost like those musk sticks, kind of. Vanilla musk sticks, kind of.
Tell you what, that is very different on the palate. Very different.
Oh, wow. That's odd.
Very different. Super odd. That was so far from what I was expecting.
It tastes nothing like it noses.
Nope. Not at all. And yet it noses somewhat like it tastes after nosing, after sipping. It noses differently.
It's kind of creamy on the nose, but there's a mentholy thing sort of happening on the palate. It's still very smooth.
It is smooth. The finish is long.
Very long.
And earthy. But
what is that strange? There's a strange bitterness.
I wonder if that comes from the Mizunara. But according to the Japanese, it doesn't.
I shouldn't have done squat.
So a little bit on the Mizunara for those that don't want to go back and listen to Battle of the Blends, but you should do so anyway, because we rip the shit out of our blends. Mizunara is a very rare native species of Japanese oak. And there's two different types, but you can go back and listen to those details. The Cliff Notes version of it is that the wood is super hard to work with. Casts are sourced from 200-year-old trees in the remote forests of Hokkaido in northern Japan. It's also porous as fuck, so it leaks. It leaks worse than an incontinent, leaky person.
Those pores, they'll also give the whiskey more contact with the wood.
And that's what allows the flavour amplification, as it were. But
With more tannins.
they do require significant time spent in those barrels.
You can imagine the amount of stock loss
And that's it.
would be just almost unjustifiable.
That's
Which is
why.
probably why they only finish rather than...
Exactly. Because your angel share could tip the scales, as opposed to being...
Wouldn't even be angel shit.
No.
Just a fucking puddle on the floor.
Yep. It'd be you'd be lucky to have half a barrel left. So it's very rarely used for whiskey, even in Japan. But so the tasting notes on Mizunara are they layer on sandalwood, coconut, and much more vanilla compared to traditional American and European oak. Mizunara creates. Maybe that's that really unexpected flavour that came through on that first sip. But compared to a traditional American and European oak, Mizunara creates an extremely smooth liquid with an unusually creamy mouthfeel. Now, this does have a slightly creamy mouthfeel to it.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that I first said. I'm surprised that I was actually backed up in an official capacity. I'm not sure I actually like that.
I'm not sure I do either.
There's a soapiness to it as well. Yeah. Creamy soap. Yeah, sandalwood.
I'm getting used to it.
Fucking insects.
I'm enjoying it more as I'm getting used to it. I don't know if it's something I would drink often.
Nah. Yeah, this is weird. This is unique. I'll give it that.
Yeah, it's very different. Very, very different. So first fill ex bourbon cask after being transferred into the Mizunara for the last 12 months of its aging.
It's just getting soapier and soapier and soapier for me.
I mean, I'd have to try the 13-year-old that hasn't been aged in Mizunara.
That'd be a good comparison.
But from this wee sampling that we're having here, I may be inclined to disagree with our Japanese friends that say that it takes 15 years for you to get an influence from the Mizunara. But you'd have to taste the 13-year-old not Mizunara to find out. It might just be Glendalough whiskey. Or it might just be...
I'm not sure I even like this at all.
it might just be Cooley whiskey.
I do have their 7-year-old, but I'm not sure if that's from their own stock.
It's super different.
I started adding water to it. That doesn't seem to be making it any better. This is not to my liking at all.
I don't think it's to my flavour profile either, to be honest.
It's quite sort of a vanilla that turns to. I get a really soapy feel, creamy, soapy hint of vanilla. Yeah, that weird sandalwood.
Yeah, it's incensey.
Yeah, it very much is. It's like going into one of those India Fox or Tree of Life stores.
Yeah, I'm not huge on it.
It's a shame. I think without the Nizanar, it probably has a fair bit of potential because it is quite smooth.
It is. Well, should we give some numbers?
I should have revisited before. The one closest to my flavor preference is definitely the Bushmills, the steamship.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Sherry cask. And I feel like I'm being poisoned in a way. My mind's being poisoned because that'd be most akin to anything Scotch.
See, I'm leaning towards the Irishman, to be honest.
It's definitely a better whiskey. It's definitely a better whiskey. Much smoother. The sherry butt just seems like a way of marketing a mass.
I agreed. And I think it's something that a lot of whiskey producers do, regardless of where they're from.
Oh, a few drops of water though, that's it's taken all the edges off. But it makes it's still lacking something, which is just probably age.
Yeah. But nothing's getting overwhelming numbers here.
No, not at all. They just don't seem to have the depth that Scotch has for me.
No.
Whether that's from the triple distillation, or lack of any sort of peat or smoke.
Yeah, agreed. There's a missing depth of the flavour that I enjoy and that I'm used to. And that's why they're probably all going to hover around similar marks. And they're all pretty high 6, low 7s.
Yeah.
I think.
I want to try and be a bit more objective, but it's very hard, considering I don't like this Glendalough at all, actually. So peculiar on the nose. It's almost like those candy bananas, but yeah, if they've been sitting in a box of incense.
Yeah, it's strange. Glad I got a bottle on my shelf.
Yeah, you might flip it for a good profit.
Not going to open it, I don't think.
No. Yeah, I'm really struggling to separate what the whiskey deserves from my personal preferences.
See, I always judge on my personal preferences.
Well, yeah. What did you say? High 6s, low 7s.
The Irishman's going to get Probably a 7.3 from me. I'm going to give the Bushmills. I'm going to be generous and give it a 6. It's a run-of-the-mill NAS.
Yeah.
And I mean, for originality, is it that original Shivers Regal did him as an Ara cask?
Shivers is a blend. This wasn't 13-year-olds anymore.
No, look, they've pushed the boundaries and they've tried to do something. So I'm not gonna just because I don't like the whiskey. I'm probably gonna give it a. There's a lot of potential there. I'm gonna give it a 6.9. But that's more on the fact that they've tried to do something that I think the base spirit has merit, but no, so I can't give it more. I can't give it more. It's gonna get a 6.2.
Yeah. This has confused me greatly. Well, let's start. Okay, I definitely consider the Irishman 12 the pick of the litter.
Agreed.
But it's nothing exceptional. It's not a standout.
Nope. It's a 7 if ever there was one.
Yeah. 7.4 kind of feels comfortable. 7.2. Okay, 7.3. Let's go. Is that what you gave it?
That's exactly what I gave it.
Yeah, it feels kind of nice. 7.2 actually. 7.2 just feels a bit right. This is where I struggle. I like the Bushmills sherry cask more than I like the Glendalough.
Yes.
But
the Glendalough is probably the better
crafted whiskey. I might have to go 6.9, 6.8 respectively. So Glendalough, I'll give it the 6.9 and I'll give Bushmills 6.8.
Well, I'm gonna kind of mirror you there. I'm gonna stick with my 6.6 for the Bushmills, but I'm gonna give the Glendalough a 6.7.
So you Glendalough, you said
6.7.
And Bushmills
6.6. And 7.3.
Yeah, we're not too far apart from each other.
No. Really are.
Alright, Rev. What do you got for us? Should we start at the bottom or the top? Let's just start in alphabetical order.
Nice.
Sherry cask reserve. He's given an 80. First fill Oloroso sherry butts. Although I'm always 100% impartial, I don't think that's something that you can describe yourself as. You need other people to say that about you.
100%.
Impartially.
Yeah.
I would be lying if I didn't say I wanted this whiskey to be not just a high scorer, but a potential Bible world champion. I did want this to be great. Really did. I think, if they did the same thing to their 10-year-old or even their 12-year-old, it would be awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to the Rev. Because in my tasting room stands a fine and very large oil portrait of the Bushmills distillery, and it is a place I've enjoyed special moments at and love the people there dearly. And also, in a few moments, Northern Ireland's miracle-making football team are about to take on Wales in the last 16 of the Euros. But sadly, the news from here at least is not good. Among the sherry butts selected has been one, and I am sure it is only one, that has been lightly sulfur treated. It means that the fruit, rather than taking off and going into complexity overdrive, crumbles slightly as the vague bitterness and tightness spreads around the palate. There are some lovely fruit moments, so there are. but Bushmills should be so much better than this. An Irish whiskey blender of old, I've been lucky enough to work with Bushmills sherry butts in pristine condition, and they can be among the best whiskies you'll ever find on this planet. Sadly, this is not fully representative. I just hope the boys in green rise to greater heights than this bottling and don't fall to an own goal like the one scored here.
Oh, gee, dude, like, way to date your fucking entry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think actually an 80 out of 100 is probably pretty fair. Glendalough, 13-year-old single malt Mizunara finish. 96.
What the fuck, Rev?
Different and adorable.
Very different. I'm not sure if it's adorable.
Nah, completely different. Different to anything I've ever had before.
Yep. Very.
It's almost perplexing.
It was perplexing. We were both clearly perplexed. Bemused, almost nonplussed.
Right, Irishman, 12 year. He's taken the bottling from the same year as us. Presumably an Antrim malt from the intensity of the chalky signature. This brings down slightly the sharpness of the honeyed sugars, very much to the malt's advantage. A vague citrus tones adds leverage to the complexity. The malt gets the odd look in, but really it is the oak in command with a beautifully roasty molasses feel to the Olmo honey. The mid-ground is akin to porridge with molten sugar. The finish is back as expected to its old chalky self. Balance. Old Bushmills like you've never quite seen here before in bottle. Oh, like you've never seen her before in bottle. So yeah, that's what we said earlier.
So he's saying that
He
it's
thinks it's old Bushmills, yeah. Even though it is Middleton, yeah. It works a treat, 92. I'd really have to get my lips around Irish to give it any more. See how much better it is than other Irish. But it's definitely the pick of the bunch.
Was that the Irishman that you were reading?
Yeah.
I didn't notice you going from Glendalough to the Irishman.
Okay.
My bad.
Pretty sure I announced it.
I probably did. So he gave this a 96 and that a 92. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree. I think the Irishman was the pick of the bunch.
Yeah. That's still going down pretty well. Well, that was interesting.
Yeah, it was
eye-opening.
It was indeed.
We're going to be thinking about that Glendalough for a while. That is so far out of left field.
Well, we may have to explore other Mizunara expressions, and we'll have to explore the 13-year-old non-Mizunara to really come to you with a
quantify our
more informed opinion on what the influence of the Mizunara cask actually is.
As always, check out the show notes at livingthedram.com.au. You'll find links to our social media, YouTube. You can watch this unedited in its entirety.
And we hope you've enjoyed our St. Patrick's Day special.
Patrick's Day, yeah. Happy, that's what we should go out on. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you all.
Hey. And hopefully we've
may you be metaphorically chasing the snakes out of your own realms.
And hopefully you're a little bit more interested and a little bit more educated on Irish whiskies, because I certainly fucking am.
Damn straight. Sláinte.
Sláinte.